imagine if you knew that you had a 1 in 5 chance of your IT project going over budget, and not just a bit over budget, a lot over budget. What would you do? Well, I'm here today with Ian Sharpe, and we're going to talk through why this happens, because it's it's a bit unique, isn't it, Ian? And if you can give
Sure
us a
is.
bit of an idea about yourself first, and then we'll start discussing these things.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. It's always great to talk with you and like
Thanks.
compare worldviews as we do. And yeah, we all learn from others. I'm the CEO of Bidand Consulting, and Bidand's a word that most people aren't familiar with. It's actually my clan motto from Scotland, although I'm not Scottish, I'm Scottish ancestry. It means enduring, and I think enduring or steadfast is sometimes how it's
Yeah.
transferred, yeah, how it's translated is a really important message on projects, being able to endure them, perhaps. But this is a topic that really resonated for me. I work with the technology so humans have a better time of it on projects and programs. And and those humans include sponsors and sponsors who just love the fact that, that 1 in 5 chance your project might not just go pop, but go boom on
Yeah.
budget. We're not talking about great results. We're not talking about schedule. We're just talking about your cost risk. And I wanted to share a couple of thoughts so you and I can talk about from our collective experience, and we absolutely welcome hearing from others watching this later during the chat as well. What's your view? What have you seen? What have you experienced? Okay. So first of all, if somebody's wondering why is there a stag logo in the middle of Bidand, it's my clan animal as part of it. Spirit
Wow.
animal possibly, but it's the clan animal, Clan Gordon. IT cost risk is unique. Now, this comes from a very, very recently published paper, and a brilliant one, looking at how unique IT cost risk is across 23 categories of project. And it's out of Oxford Global Projects and just been recently published in the Project Management Journal. And if people want to go and have a look at the data, read the paper, please do go and read the paper. There's some amazing insights in there. There's a link at the bottom of this. We're quite happy to share the pack so you can see this. And you might say, what am I really looking at here? Well, how many numbers of projects were in the sample? Well, not a great deal of Olympics, 5,360 IT projects in the data set. And if we look at what percentage of projects have that cost overrun, well, again, 100% of Olympics, 100% track record of a cost overrun as part of that. A little or a lot, some are notorious, others were better in their record of placement of that as well. That's not what we're focusing in on, because you might say, hey, look at the grey highlight here. 40.86% of IT projects out of that whole stable, 5,360 projects, had a degree of cost overrun. Could have been $1, could have been a lot more. But here's the killer pun. This set of categories is sorted because IT seems like a safer bet when you look at the 41%. Of course it is, than the Olympics, and scale of investment, very different again. But look at the next column. 18.26% of those projects had a cost overrun greater than 1.5, greater than 150%.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Mm-hmm.
But then it gets worse because you say, okay, of everything that had greater than 1.5, 150%, how much worse could it get? Well, if you look at the range of everything that went over, beyond 150%, they're saying that 5.53 says your project blew out. The mean was 453%. So you spent all of your money and then did that project budget another 4.5 times.
Yeah. And we've
Rough
seen
enough.
this. You and I have seen it. This
We
happened.
have. It does. You're right.
Yeah.
So, but this doesn't really hit home as to why. And it was, and seeing this table made me go, ooh, let me put this in context. Nuclear storage facilities blow out less in terms of percentage. Not, that could be billions of dollars, of course. It could different scale of the actual cost, but less in the percentage than IT projects do. Olympics, their mean overrun is 300%. So your cost risk on the Olympics is far greater certainty that they're going to blow out. But when they do, they don't blow out by as much as a percentage. Well, you may not care about a percentage, but there's something that really puts it in play here. And that's what, Budzinger, Kiel, Zatoli, Brent Fluberg's research is really calling out here. There is an exposure of a level of cost risk that is beyond what people really realise. So, dear sponsor, that 18.26%, well, it's not 20%, but let's call it you've got a 1 in 5 chance of going bigger than 150% on your budget on these stats, and pretty high. Remember, that's the mean overrun at 453%. So out of the range of things that blew out more than 150%, in the mean is 453%. Some are far worse, and you and I have seen those too.
Correct. Yes. Not on our projects, though.
No, of course not.
No.
But the challenge is we need to think about cost risk on IT projects in a really different way.
Yes.
And I like the saying, the old poem, and I've reappropriated it. When it was good, it was very, very good. But when it was bad, it was awful. And from a related paper, again, similar authors, a really good piece of research here in the Journal of Management Info, I found that there's a sweet spot. We all think, when we think about the risk of where the cost of the project comes in, you think of a bell curve and you think it might be a little bit less if you have a miracle. It might be a little bit more. We'll put contingency in, and you factor it on a bell curve. The problem is that we now know IT project cost overruns don't follow a standard bell curve. You can see a bit of a bell curve, a very, very hot peak here. Although that's not exactly what we're mapping here. You get the point when you say if you're at 1, you were exactly on budget. And sitting at 2, still looks like you're at the extreme end of the bell curve. It's a bell curve, but it's not a standard one. And you're at 100% cost overrun at that point. But there's this long, long, long tail after that.
Yeah.
And the further along that tail you are, the worse it gets. And that's the point when we assume that things follow a standard deviation, a standard bell curve. We're more concerned, we don't think we've really got that much of a risk. Any statisticians who are listening into this, I'm going to ask you forgiveness because I'm going to slightly butcher stats, but this is actually a power law distribution. And what that means is that it's got a great big fat tail of when it goes wrong, it can go really wrong.
For a long time.
This isn't so much duration, but yes, it can have very, very long consequences. And one of the problems they started to speculate is why?
Yeah.
Well, there are chain reactions in which you can start off with something going wrong in one area and it magnifies, not in a critical path sense, folks. Remember, this is just cost risk. And so we tend to assume that the projects that we are doing follow, what's the chance of it going wrong? Well, relatively low, and everybody assumes this. What's the chance of it going really wrong? Well, very, very small, and that's true if it fits a standard bell curve. IT projects don't.
I was going to ask you that. I wrote down, do we need to look at the risk on IT projects differently to risk on other projects? Like, is it a completely different way of looking at things?
I think it is in the class of cost risk, and that's a really good question, Susan, because you're going to say we're not being prophets of doom here. Nobody actually knows why. There's speculation, and I think that that's a really good point to look at. But you start to understand why. If I just jump back a moment, look at that 5.53, the average. You
Yeah.
start to understand why in the tail, that fat tail, why the mean is sitting as high as it is. In fact, it's actually worse. If you go and read the paper, IT cost risk sits in a class of its own at the moment because of the sheer extent of that tail. You might notice at the end that tail actually goes up. It's not it's not a flaw in the data.
Right.
We're not saying that you have an infinite risk of cost blowout because people shut things down, of course.
Yeah.
But if you're not realizing that your chance of when things go wrong could be much, much bigger percentile-wise than you are really banking on, you're going to miscategorize your IT cost risk. And of course, we can't afford, gigantic budgets. Nobody can afford, contingency of 400, 500, 600% of the budget. That's insane.
Well, we'd never start, would we?
Well, and that's exactly right. Be a sponsor. If you had a 1 in 5 chance of blowing your budget by 450%, you would never start that.
You'd never start. And I know that we've got some things to talk about with this, but what I find fascinating is this chain reaction, which is one of the points in here. And particularly from a program perspective, when we're managing several projects, and you will have done this, of course, are we more likely to go, oh, well, that project's underperforming in terms of its budget, but the other 5 maybe are going okay, and we're more tolerant? Do you think that's where it's starting?
I think that's a really good segue for us to debate about it, because chain reactions is one thing that Suberg et al. And remember, folks, they're looking at real world data, where projects were committed to on final business case position and where they ended up. We're not trying to ascribe cause here, but they've been able to prove that, you know what, if you think that your cost risk is going to sit in a neat little standard bell curve for IT cost risk, we know it doesn't. And that's okay, because there's lots and lots of things we can do about it. So we talked about chain reactions. Susanne, from your experience, when you've been leading and helping clients avoid exactly this kind of chain reaction and the impact it can have, a very big force multiplier on budget, how have you helped clients stop the chain reaction?
I think, well, there's a couple of ways, and certainly, I'm either at the start where I'm setting up the whole transformation program, and when I'm at the start, and I always will say, your organisation is capable and has the capacity to have this many projects under my program. Any more than that, and we're not going to fly. So right at the start, I'm setting that expectation that we're only going to probably have 5 in a fairly large organisation under a program. And when I say 5, some of them are programs in and of themselves, so they can be still quite large. Exactly. But the other thing that I always do is when I do my budget, and I don't think a lot of people do this, and this is because I've come from a finance and administration background when I first started, I do a cash flow projection. Because remember, I'm doing transformation, which is 18 months to 3 years. So I'm saying for each one of these components, this is my cash flow projection. And then I'm looking at that every month to see, are we on track to where we expect? Of course, when you come in to a project to remediate it, that's a whole different ballgame. And that's really when we've got to look at all of those components around how they've been reporting status, performance in terms of financials. It's very holistic, I think. It's complex. It's not just one answer. And if you don't know,
Exactly.
probably those chain reactions and the dependencies, how many times do we not see dependencies between projects, not in a program, but across an
Yeah.
organisation? So that's sort of where I've come from.
Mm.
I suppose very pragmatic, really.
Mm. And look, I'm vigorously nodding as you're talking. I have the same thing.
Yeah,
Obviously it also depends for me on the nature of the projects that you're doing.
correct.
For example, you might have products that are being delivered via Agile underneath a project or a program framework as well. And your return of value, your burn rate, a number of things give those important cues. Yeah, are you adding value? You're going to make the day as well. On classic programs that I've led and in the transformation space, I look at earned value management from a cost prediction
Mm,
perspective to say, if I am saying even, and it takes a lot of attention to do it well. It's easy to
yeah.
spook yourself with it, but with
Mm,
proper discipline, you can set this up well. And when I'm told, yeah, we're going to make the day, and I go, okay, I'm not going to look at schedule. You need to earn schedule for that to do that well. Shout out to Kim Henderson and Walt Lipke there for
yes,
their work,
yes,
which I commend.
exactly.
Um,
Yes, yes, I've
but
worked
if
with
I
Kim too.
just look at my cost performance index
Mm,
and somebody says, CPI is 0.83. And I said, oh, cool. Every buck I'm spending on scope, I'm getting 83 cents of work completed,
yeah,
of the scope completed that I plan to do here. Okay, there could be a little bit of wobbliness. Somebody tells me that, and I'm at the beginning of the project, first couple of weeks, I can recover from that. Somebody tells me that a few weeks in, very
yeah,
quickly, I can't recover from that. And there
yeah.
is always something causing it. So if I
Mm,
assume accurate planning, we're behind for some reason.
mm,
And every time I've found CPI dip below 0.8,
yeah.
which it can, I've found we missed scope
Mm,
or something happened in the broader organization that has interfered. And when it happens, well, we're now doing scope, but it got streamed. Okay, I can see why I'm getting that impact. We're heading along the highway at about 80% of where we should be, the cost
yeah.
highway, again, for clarity. And I've always found some form of chain reaction association with it as well. I think that the other boxes that I've got on this page here, I just want to explain to people listening in that the bottom four are not root causes. These are speculation. Nobody actually knows and can prove why IT cost risk is so high, why it's fat-tailed. In other words, when it goes boom, it can go boom a lot.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
getting that skew.
Mm,
And uh, Bent and the team had some good speculations, and they said in their paper very clearly, we're not saying we've proved this, but what we found is all of the data we've looked at doesn't disprove this. They said, and I think if we go maybe left to right and talk about the bottom row, first thing, they're tough friends, and they said, the IT industry in project management is still relatively new. This is new as in
yes,
human history by
correct.
comparison
Yeah,
to
absolutely. And it's
other
rapidly,
disciplines.
rapidly changing.
And it
Rapid.
sure is.
Yeah,
So they called out maybe immaturity is part of this. Now, of course, there are splendid projects and programs delivered in IT and by a number of
yeah,
players in the world. The industry as a whole has a mix of disciplines, a mix of standards. And you know what? I don't think any industry has claimed the top prize for being brilliant at project management yet. Sorry if anybody listening in thinks that you have.
yeah.
This is the truth of
Yep.
my view. Debate my issues.
Look, once upon a time, when I started a long time ago, about 30 years ago, because I'd previously done construction. I learnt construction. So I learnt project management in there. Then I went into finance and admin, right?
Yeah.
Even in the like the 90s, IT was running very fast, which it still is, but everybody used to say IT project management was immature, construction project management is more mature. And sometimes they tried to overlay the construction on the IT, and it was just so burdensome that it just got thrown out.
Yep. And we've all suffered from methodology bloat and things that don't
Yeah,
serve well. My number one pet hate is when people go traditional versus agile project management. And I said, what are you actually comparing? Hammers and saws?
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
or what for versus agile and project management? I said, neither's project management, folks. Yes, there's projects in terms of doing something unique and special and
Yeah.
different. I am an agilist. I'm an evangelist for it too, as
Mm,
iterative development of products, and it sits outside of IT as well.
mm,
Person comes into your house to do a job, and they say, "I have a hammer," and I'll go, "Good for you. I need a
yeah,
window put in,
yeah,
you know, or I need something unscrewed." Uh, and problem is, we used to pick up the right tool for the job. So there is an
key.
immaturity of practice sometimes
Absolutely. Mm,
that is one of the speculative root causes. And
mm,
the underneath each of these boxes, I've had a bit of a think and I put it up for debate. I think referencing practices that fit the nature of the project helps. Um,
yes.
every sponsor on the planet I've asked about and said, "How unique is your project?" 0 to 10. What do you think the most common number they said was?
Then everybody was
Well,
unique.
everybody feels unique and different. Not quite 10. There was hope, but they
Right.
typically said 7. And I said, "Okay, are you
Right.
rating unique for you or unique for the world?" They went, "Well, I don't know about the world, but we've never done it before. So therefore it's unique."
Right.
And when you believe things are unique and special and different, you tend to make them bespoke. You treat them as if they're bespoke. You treat them as
Ah,
if they're large. Yeah, you treat them as if you've got to lift every rock and look at everything. It's entirely new. You have to invent that wheel from moment one, right? You've seen this in your career, I'm
yes,
sure.
yes, exactly. I think this is definitely something that starts almost a behavioral chain reaction. So we've
Yeah.
talked about immaturity of tools and all of that and systems. We've talked about the organisation's maturity and capability, maybe the project manager and the team. But I had wondered about this, whether there was a behavioural thing, and you sort of alluded to it a little bit before when you said it was already slipping, the project was already slipping. And people go,
Yeah.
oh, okay, fair enough, it's already slipped. If
Hmm.
something's already slipping, like
Do something about it.
that's not in my terminology when I'm a project
Yes.
manager.
Mm.
If I've seen something's going to slip, I'm going to do something about it, change request, whatever it is, negotiate, get rid of it, whatever it is. But I'm not going to be talking to people about it slipping. So
Yeah.
we've already got a culture or of a behaviour that says we're really special. This IT stuff is, a bit of a magic box and we don't all understand it. Even still, we're
Mm.
getting that. We've got immaturity. I think we might be onto something.
Yeah, I think so. And that, by the way, to our dear project colleagues, it's the sponsor's fault, of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
because they believe it's special and different. So therefore,
Yeah.
they're going to shape their attitude and risk to that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet,
Yeah.
if I think about unique to organizations is one thing. If you go and read Dan Gardner and Bent Fluberg's great book, How Big Things Get Done, they call out again and again and again, what's your Lego? Modularity. In other words, anybody else done it? It's the same here. Yes,
Yeah.
I've never built this system in that organization. You know what?
Mm,
There are ERP playbooks. There are
absolutely.
plenty of examples of where people
Plenty.
have gone
Plenty.
brilliantly or boom, right?
Yeah.
So reference others. Go look at what others have done. What was their experience? Why?
Mm.
And find your Lego in chunking down the scope to find what's not bespoke.
Mm.
I hate customization of systems. I'm fine to configure things, but every time somebody reaches into code and goes, you get technical debt. And
Yeah.
you've got to support it, and you've got to understand it, and sure, it makes sense sometimes. But I prefer to adopt and adapt, not
Yeah.
customize for that very reason. Because every time we say we're special and different, of course we are as individuals, just like everybody else.
That's probably why we find these project manager roles have got to be this type or that type of role. They're not just
Mm,
project management.
yeah.
We also did just recently a webinar on test management and about how the project manager and the test manager can collaborate more effectively for better outcomes. And some of this, I think, is to do with this added risk and cost blowout, because in my experience, the cost of testing is always underestimated, and not by a little bit,
And
by a
mine too.
lot.
Mine too.
Yeah, by a lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what we were talking about is, for program managers like me and like you, I have a pretty good idea right when I'm first planning what my test strategy is going to be like. So I'm
Mm,
going all the way through preparing the stakeholders. This is what we think we're going to be testing, because you don't always get the test manager on board. But
mm.
it doesn't happen like that for most.
No. And what are
Mm.
we testing against?
Yeah.
You know, it's a world of difference between doing your system integration testing, post-production testing, user acceptance testing. You have very, very different experiential lenses and expertise required as part of that. I think the best
Mm.
way to learn how hard it can be is go write test cases against your original requirements.
Yeah.
And then how did that mutate against what you actually build?
Yes, exactly.
We this lovely pipe dream. It's all seamless and it all just clicks into
Mm.
place and it works. For part of it, it will. But yeah, I think there's a lesson to be learned unless you've actually done it. And that kind of
Yes.
I think that brings us nicely into intangibility. So
I
one of
was
the
going to say.
speculations
Mm.
was that, you know what, things can be hard enough to understand when you do have the background.
Mm. Yeah.
When you don't have the background, you can take 3, maybe 4 seconds for a sponsor's eyes to glaze over and not understand what they're actually dealing with at all.
Yeah.
So, Einstein saying, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. So, well,
Correct.
the only way we can do simple is break down the complexity. you
Yeah.
know, break down the way in which it's delivered. How often have you seen in your careers people commit to the pie in the sky grand vision and they know how to do the first piece? They can't scope or tell you what happens after that, but they will still try to commit to the full journey.
Yes. Too often.
Mm. So, of
Mm.
course, it's going to go south.
Yeah.
Yeah. How could you go from your initial estimates from there to here in your level of planning when you don't know that level of certainty? So just even taking an iterative approach,
Yeah.
we're going to plan out as far as here. Where do we need to adjust our course? I've never heard a sponsor say, oh dear, we allowed too much budget for this project or
Me
program.
neither. No,
I
me
keep
neither.
wishing for it, but it's my job too, and
Yeah.
yours, to say, you've got the right amount of funding and a reasonable amount of contingency you can bear for
Yes.
this.
Exactly. When
But
you're talking about this intangibility, there have been times when I've done what I call scenario planning. It's
mm,
like, well, we don't really know. And I'm not talking agile now, I'm not talking iterative, I'm talking at the stakeholder level. What does it look like when it's been delivered? What's the
yeah,
scenario that you're after? How does it feel when it's achieved? What's the
mm,
what's the purpose for it in the business?
that's
And
right.
let's then go away, as the IT project. and see whether or not that's actually achievable with
Mm.
all of the components that go into that for this organisation.
Yeah,
You know,
dead
and then
right.
come back.
And that's it. Exactly. I
Mm,
think there's intangibility too. Poor IT often gets, in the gun sights because of intangibility for what the heck the organization really wants. And then the organization crediting everybody with miracle worker powers. So it's
mm,
intangibility coming down from the mountain too. A
mm.
good friend of mine, Ross Andron, once had a great line with the sponsor. He held up a pen and he said, "What's this?" And he got on very well with the sponsor. And
Yeah.
the sponsor said, "It's a pen." And he said, "Oh, good. We're both clear. It's not a magic wand."
Yes, exactly. Look, and also, how often have you heard a sponsor come down to to usually it's an agile team or it's somebody, and they probably shouldn't even be there, but they've come down, they go, well, what is going on? What are you people doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Now, this is a message out there to sponsors. If you're going to ask that question, then you need to look at yourself, first of all, and find out why you don't know these answers. Go to your project manager and work through it. But
Mm.
too many times I have seen that. What are you people doing? That what is going on? And what they're talking about is not people not being productive. It's a magic box that they don't understand is what they're talking about.
That's right. And I love that magic box analogy too, because I've had sponsors appear and ask that question on
Yeah,
leading major initiatives that were delivered via Agile, a scaled Agile framework, and the
yeah,
such. That was the right fit for what we needed to do. And, they've come down, down from their office or wherever they magically appeared from, and they've said things like, why are we doing this? And they've been talking to the Scrum Master or the Agilist or
yeah,
whichever particular flavor docked up into the scaled Agile framework. And I didn't realize they were loose in the building, otherwise I'd have intercepted them.
yeah.
Uh, and they said to the Agilist leading the team, what are we doing here? Well, that person could answer them. And they could answer them in a way that tied directly into things that they understood
Right.
because they had a very, very clear and strong engagement with the product owner. The product owner
Yeah.
spoke pure business. So that agile team within that broader framework could answer them,
And
and they answered them well.
this leads back to what we're talking about. That usually the sponsor or a key stakeholder will start wandering around the building when they're either not getting answers, but it's generally budget driven.
Yeah,
The first
it
thing that
is.
they get, oh my gosh, we're going over budget. That's their big red flag. Well, really,
Mm,
they should have been looking at the red flags earlier. But but this is where we're talking about IT cost risk. Maybe it's unique. Maybe it's that behavioural culture. Maybe it's a black box. I don't know, but there's
no.
certainly a few things here. And then goal ambiguity. Now, what do you mean by that one?
Do you mean I've been ambiguous? Goal ambiguity. This is exactly the point we were just talking before. I think we actually got a 2-for-1 when we talked about intangibility. What
Yeah,
the heck are we trying to do here?
yeah,
And we're trying to put in a system. Okay, cool. I'll give you a good example of goal ambiguity. Have you ever asked a sponsor, what does a huge success look like for you after the project is finished?
yes.
What did you hear back? Crickets?
Crickets, crickets. That's right, crickets.
Yeah. So
Mm,
if the sponsor who has the purse strings and the authority to commit resources doesn't know the answer to that,
yeah,
they're ambiguous what their real goal is. The number of
exactly.
times I've said, what are we creating here? Well, we're doing a rail line. Okay, what are we doing here? We're doing a trunk line to extend to rural broadband connection. What are we
Yeah,
doing here? Well, we're building a nuclear power station. What are we doing here? We're going to Mars with a probe. Okay,
yeah,
cool. Why?
right.
It is.
Yeah,
It's not the why. It's the what.
yeah,
And
exactly.
and we take what to mean why. And
Mm.
we often have cultures where we're afraid to speak up and ask questions.
Too often have I had to say to a project manager, you've now got to go and speak to your sponsor.
Yeah.
And you've got to go with evidence, not
Mm,
emotion, the evidence. And so many seem to be frightened of speaking to their sponsor. And
mm,
then the sponsor, and I've experienced this too, but it doesn't wash with me, the sponsor tries to bat them away.
mm.
No, that's not going to work either. So
Difficult
some of,
question. Go away,
yeah, it's a
fly.
difficult question, but as project managers, more and more, and particularly in IT, I think we're talking about here, it's not
Mm,
just the technology. And I've been talking about this for a while, and so have you. It's the management
mm.
skill, it's the
Yeah.
people skill, it's the ability to say, now, why are you trying to move me
Yeah.
along? These are the sort of questions I need you, sponsor, to be asking. And this
Mm,
is why I need you to be asking me these questions. We've got to educate them.
absolutely. Yeah, we do. You did right, Suzanne. And
Mhm.
if we think about how many accidental project managers there are in the world,
Yes, yeah,
how many accidental sponsors,
lots, too many.
and way too many. So when it's a very different mindset for what you're trying to do, it's really easy. And I've done it
Mm,
myself as a sponsor to
mm,
accidentally send the wrong signal to shut down a conversation. Wasn't the intent, but it's super, super easy to do. It
yeah,
works the other way too. I was sitting running a major program for a client a few years back, and I had a grad on my team. In fact, I had several. And the grad sat in the meeting, and I'd said to them, you can ask any question you like. And one very brave grad did. Wow, I'm glad that they did. And she
yeah.
said, I don't understand something. And the rest of the team said, oh, we'll take that offline. We'll take that offline. And I said, hang on. I like it when people ask questions because then they have different views. Others
Yeah,
see things we don't. What's your question? And they asked about the technology that we were using. And over the weekend, they'd read an article. They were interested in it. They had that wonderful curiosity, not yet
yeah,
jaded in project management.
yeah.
And they went, couldn't we use this for that? That one question, everybody else went, oh, yeah, we'll take it offline. We'll take it offline. I said, I don't
Mm,
know.
mm,
Does
mm.
anybody else know? And they went, I don't know. And I said, okay, why don't we have a look? That saved
Yeah.
$3 million
Mm,
and avoided a whole heap of technical debt for the future. That one
yeah,
question. So I was really, really, really glad that grad spoke up. And I said, right, from here
yeah.
on in, nobody's getting a tattoo, but imagine you had others see things we don't on your forehead.
Exactly.
They're going to.
Exactly. I quite often, I've got my yellow sticky notes up here, and when I did some work in Thailand with a bank to put in a bleeding edge that was at the time system, enterprise application integration. They are often hesitant to speak up, and I had a very big
Mm,
team, big software development team, and so I introduced the sticky notes. And they could just write something really simple on a sticky note and bang it up on the
mm,
wall as they were going out, um, leaving the office. And nobody knew what was going, who it may have been, right?
mm.
And they could just do that. And that brought up a whole raft of things. One was that one of the tech guys continually went into the server and pulled the plug out. This is a bank we're talking about? And
Wow.
he'd do that after people would go home. And he put it back in, but he thought he was doing some sort of checking. So that was pretty chaotic. Another one on a different project where I was doing the finance work on the project. So I wasn't a program manager by this stage. It was about $7.5 million project. I said, what is this great big piece of machinery that's out here for $1.2 million? Well, nobody wanted to answer me. Um, and everybody was embarrassed to get the vendor to take it back because it hadn't been used. and nobody wanted to confront the vendor. Well, of course I did, and we ended up instead of 7.5 million, it was down to 6 point something or other, the project. But there's a lot of that, isn't there? That and
There
you've
sure
got to
is.
either stakeholder resistance, people don't understand, but it's often
Yep.
the project manager or the team don't speak up.
Yep. Well, that's such a really good point too. Stakeholder resistance can be because people haven't spoken up. I was working with Humanising IT, and they've got a fantastic course that I really recommend to people
Yeah,
with where Trina McDermott was talking about, and she's championed about humanising IT. Of course, we have a lot of humans in IT and splendid folks too.
yeah,
But if we think about things like IT services, or the key difference between a user of a system and a customer they're supporting,
yeah,
bringing into that sort of double diamond thinking to say, think about the human experience
mm,
of using and interacting with that. I have been witness to the birth of many, many systems, and I've thought with a lot of them, where was the conversation with somebody who actually had to use this or support a
I
customer
know.
by doing so?
It's so
Apps,
basic.
but very, very basic. And folks, if you think about broadly IT service management, there's a lot of hardworking, capable people involved in that and evolving services and making them better.
Yeah,
Make sure you're not just focusing on the process. If you have very great courage, go and talk to a customer.
yes,
Find out, and the customer is not a user. So, an example at an airport, you might
mm,
have somebody who's a facility manager using a technical solution to support customers at the airport. Could be an airline, could be passengers. And we've all experienced great and poor customer service in our times. That whole point on stakeholder resistance is sometimes when the humanizing aspect or the human experience is missing, we get resistance to engage, resistance to adopt. People saying, I don't want to use this. A number of years ago, I was at a university and I was told academics do not use systems. And I said, really? You've got a phone in your hand.
yes,
I said,
exactly. What is
I'm
that?
going to challenge you. And they said,
Hmm.
go ahead, but make it worthwhile. And I said, academics do not use crap systems that take them away
Yes,
from teaching and research. And they
yes.
said, damn it, you're right. I
Mm.
said, we want the same thing. How can we have a power struggle?
And I'm just going to remind people that are watching to please give us a thumbs up and subscribe down below to the channel so that we can bring more of these things to you. We love bringing these things to people around project technique and how to apply it because it seems to be a little bit lacking around there. Just on that note that you made, I recently, well, you and I both work for universities,
Mm,
and along similar lines, researchers, and I've been a researcher myself as like, as a semi-academic, but um, in this organisation that I worked with, there were software teams, agile teams, beavering away on a research system, right? And I said, well, we need to go and talk to the researchers. Oh, we don't talk to the researchers.
why not?
We don't
They're the
talk to
ones
the
who have
research.
to. Yeah,
Oh
you've
no,
got
because
to.
we had a bad experience with them a while ago, and we don't talk to them because we don't want to
Mm,
upset them.
look,
I
I
mean,
absolutely get.
hello.
Yeah. Yeah, but did you have a bad experience because you hadn't talked to them and they had a different view? Stakeholders resist things for very good reasons.
And
My
this is
wife
what,
once,
sorry,
sorry, no, no, please, Suzanne, you go ahead.
I'm just going to say every single one of these boxes that you've just highlighted, every single one is adding cost. It's
Yeah,
potentially adding cost. It's potentially
potentially, yeah.
adding risk. It's potentially adding time,
Mm,
scope, all of those things. And it's up to us as project managers to mitigate all of those things. I've been so often asked in interviews, not so much anymore. So, did you deliver that project on time and on budget? And I go, well, every one of my projects was delivered on time and on budget. But that's
mm,
not the question you're actually asking me
no.
because What they're actually asking me was, did I fail? No, I didn't
Yeah.
fail because I did change requests. I did all of those
Mm.
things to change the scope as the scope was required to change.
Yeah.
But yes, root cause speculation and antidotes. Have we got some antidotes, do you think? Can we sort of
Yeah.
summarize some of this?
Well, I think some of the antidotes here, for example, if we think about the last box we haven't talked about, think fast. There's people often, and we're
Yes.
channeling a bit of Daniel Kahneman here as well. If you don't know Think Fast, Think Slow, go have a look. It's brilliant, brilliant Nobel Prize winning work for very, very good reason about how humans actually process the world. Well, think fast. It looks like this, so we'll do that.
Mm,
Heuristic level kind of response as well. And so it's often in a very high pressure environment, people make very quick decisions. Sometimes they're right,
yeah.
but just sometimes you need to slow down and think there's a better way of doing this. The grad who spoke up.
Mm,
So I think the antidotes here, we're not saying, folks, that these are, the seven deadly sins of IT cost risk. Nobody's saying that. Nobody can prove it. There's no causal connection proven yet between these elements, the bespoke, the think fast and chain reactions added on top of the base of four, and to say, these are definitely the root causes, and if you deal with these, you won't have, your cost risk exposure is going to shrink to a much more comfortable space for you, an affordable space for you. But
mm,
what we are saying is that, you know what? The evidence doesn't disprove it either. And if you found a grain of truth in what we've been saying and debating about here, there's a reason it
mm,
says speculation right in the title.
yeah.
But you
Yeah.
know what? If this is intuitively true for you folks, you can do something. It does not require the magic wand. Ambiguous about goals? Ask until you're clear.
Yes.
Asking once is courageous. Asking twice, it feels life-threatening sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I worked with a coup a couple of years back. He was brilliant at doing this. He would ask until he was clear. If you went in, to your earlier point, Suzanne, if you went
Yeah.
in without the data to back you, why
Correct.
this rather than that?
Yeah.
If you went in with your opinion, he would go with his. If you went in
Yeah.
and he said, why this, not that? And you could say, well, the reason is boom, 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 boom. We've
Mm,
investigated that. This is where that takes us. This is the answer here. This is the data to back that. This is the next one. What's your view? Most times he was very good at listening. And
yeah.
he said once in a meeting, I think it's not unreasonable that you're all prepared before you meet with me. And he was dead right.
Wow. Wow.
and
That's
and
interesting.
he was seeking clarity the other way here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if it's intangible to you, sit down and have a think about it.
Yes,
Break
because
it
you can
into
always
meaningful pieces.
break it into pieces. You can always ask, how am I going to feel when
Mm,
it's been delivered? Now, that's an
yeah.
intangible, but I've actually said that to someone. I've said, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And just describe that feeling to me. Because, I'm autistic, which is correct. I am autistic. So I will push people for that absolute clarity. How do
Mm,
you feel about it? Because they could tell me I'm going to feel fantastic. But what does fantastic look like?
yeah.
Like, are you going to tick
Exactly.
everything off? What does fantastic look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and how do we feel? If people are really, really honest, the answer is surprised, relieved.
Yes.
Yeah, but
All good.
if we are aiming for surprised and relieved, we haven't set the project up for success.
Exactly. We've already set it up to fail. And the other thing
Mm,
too, which I'd say probably happens with IT, maybe would happen in other projects too,
mm,
but probably a contributor is is that people get started, like you were saying, things start to slip, and instead of going, hang on, now let's try and work this out now. there's massive pressure to keep going for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You know?
I like the way you put it. Let's work this out, not I will work it out, you will work it out. Let's work it out.
Let's work it out because
Success
we're a
is
team.
always, exactly. Success is always going to come from a team. And what a great note to end on. Success, I've never seen a schedule deliver a project in its life.
Exactly. No.
We do.
We do. And part of, I think, our role as a project manager is to facilitate that journey. That's how I think of it more. I've got all of these things that I'm looking across and I'm doing, but if I set it up well, and certainly with the budget, set that budget up really well. I mean, I've had projects where I've got New South Wales Treasury, down my throat. Then I'm capable and I feel good about going and answering the hard questions that they're likely going to ask me because I've got the evidence. I've got it there. I haven't hidden it away.
Yeah. And a great point. Hard questions aren't hard because you know the answer. That just makes them harder if you don't.
Yeah, it does. But you can always say, I don't know.
Hard answers, hard answers to digest. I really don't want to hear it as a sponsor. You know what? If I do not want to go, boom, the 453% as the mean, folks. Remember, that's the mean. Could be much better or much worse, but that's the mean after you've gone north of 150%.
Yeah. And look, I think today we've looked at some potential root causes. We've looked at some speculation. Certainly looked at some stats that are real, as you said, and that is across a lot of projects. And we've considered and offered some suggestions, and we could offer suggestions as project managers as to how and what tool and technique you would use. I would say to people again, again, thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you are stuck and if you don't know where to go with this and you're on a big project, be it a project manager, program manager, or a sponsor or a concerned stakeholder, put your hand up to people like myself and Ian because we can help you. It doesn't need to be enormous. And just before I throw to you, Ian, to finish, Ian's details will be on the website on www.pmclinic.com.au. Under webinars and events, there is a section with guest presenters, so you can contact Ian. The presentation will be available. This will be put on YouTube channel, which is probably where people will be seeing it, but reach out. So, Ian, thank you so much. I just want to throw to you just to get a bit of a summary, if there's a summary that you want to give before we sign off.
Yeah, thank you, Susanne. I'm going to channel a little bit of Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, when she said, never doubt the power of a small group of thoughtful, committed people change the world. Yeah. Because in actual fact, it's the only thing that ever has. I would say, never doubt the power of a small, thoughtful group of committed project professionals in whatever walk of life you're in, because in actual fact, including sponsors, we change the world when we get this right, and often for the better. So Thank you, everybody, for taking your time to listen and enjoyed the debate. And thank you, Susanne, too, for having me on the channel, because it's always an enjoyable conversation and sometimes a little therapeutic too when you compare scars and stories.
Yep, compare them. But yes, it's been fantastic. Thanks so much, Ian, and I really appreciate it, and look forward to next time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.